Welcome to the Job Shop Show, where we talk with the owners, suppliers, partners, and customers of custom manufacturers. Listen and learn the secrets of top-performing job shops, the tools, techniques, and backgrounds that have made them successful, all in the quest of raising the bar for custom manufacturing. I'm your host, Jay Jacobs. This episode is sponsored by Paperless Parts, connecting buyers and suppliers of custom manufactured parts. The Paperless platform is a secure, ITAR-compliant, cloud-based manufacturing system for suppliers that reduces the amount of time spent on sales, estimating, quoting, administration, and order processing. It offers seamless integration with the accounting and ERP software tools that shops already use, such as QuickBooks, E2, and JobBoss. Paperless Parts was founded with a mission to make manufacturing more accessible by streamlining the quote-to-cash process. Spend less time quoting and more time selling. Shazam! This is Jay Jacobs. Welcome again to the Job Shop Show. It is summertime, and a pointed question for you is, are you trapped in your business, unable to escape beyond a couple long weekends because you're fighting fires and constantly working in your business rather than on your business? Would you rather be at the lake or ocean, or maybe simply poolside, enjoying time with family and friends? If you're frustrated thinking about this question, our guest today, Mark Winters, can help. It worked for me. And the answer is how to put in place a company operating system, a structure that glues together the pieces of how your company runs and gets everyone involved, makes them accountable, flavored, of course, to how you want your company to run. Mark's an author, podcaster, and entrepreneur. The last part is important. He has sat in our shoes. He still does. This is not theoretical. He ran companies without operating systems and now runs them with one. He shares his journey, and we dive deep into how to get started, why to get started, and what to expect. Open the fire hose by tuning in now. Welcome to the Job Shop Show, Mark.
Thanks, Jay. Great to be with you.
Yeah. I've actually had more than a couple shop owners when I told them that I would be talking with you, that they said, let me know when the podcast comes out, because the area that you're an expert in, the building of companies' structures so that they can perform optimally, is of intense interest to many people. I really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, well, I love hearing that.
All right. So I thought we'd start by saying, who is Mark Winters?
Oh, gee, it's a great question. I was born in rural Oklahoma. Yeah, how far back do you want to go? So my story in a nutshell, Jay, and you've probably heard this a little bit, but I started out in big corporate, caught the entrepreneurial bug in grad school at the University of Chicago, and that led to a series of entrepreneurial ventures. 15 different companies that I either started myself, acquired from somebody, shut down, or sold off. So all different types of industries, all different levels of success, or whatever the opposite of success is, and lots of lessons obviously learned the hard way along the way, and then really made the transition about 15 years ago from operator to more of an advisory role and started teaching. And I formed a number of CEO peer groups here in Dallas. I'm in Dallas. I was doing that and teaching some of those folks to implement what we'd call an operating system to help them run their business, because that's what I had done. I'd, again, learned the hard way that was much easier, or much more effective than just kind of flying by the seat of your pants. So they sort of twisted my arm, got them to help get something like that started. And then I met a fellow named Gino Wickman, and discovered a system that he had created called EOS. And I thought, yeah, this is actually a better mousetrap than what I've been using. And so I started teaching that, and that sort of caught fire here in Texas. And next thing I knew, I didn't have enough time to do all the stuff I was trying to do. So I started to kind of ditch some things and really just focus on implementing that system. And, Gino and I became fast friends. We had a lot of history in common, which was kind of cool. And he's like, hey, ever thought about writing a book? And that led us to write Rocket Fuel. We really got to dive deep into the visionary integrator relationship in an entrepreneurial company. And so that took off. And, so I've been basically doing that kind of stuff ever since.
Definitely want to get into your book. A lot of great content in there. was thinking, I did a little research before, and are you still coaching youth football?
Well, so I'm retired from that, but I have three boys, the
Yeah.
oldest of which is 28. The youngest actually just graduated from college. He's 22. So
Hmm.
all those guys I coached, and they unfortunately kind of take them away from me when they get into high school, and they won't let me do it then. But all from the time that they were, I don't know how many years it adds up to, probably 15, maybe 20 years, I guess, because of the age gap. But yeah, at least at the moment, I'm retired from that, Jay. I miss it though.
Yeah. I was curious on coaching youth and
Mm.
what perspective that gave you that you were able to transition into your day job. Obviously, it's a different audience, and there are probably different tool sets that may have been aha moments for you that you were able to make that transition. Is there anything there?
Yeah, so that's really a great question that I've never really thought about. The first thing that comes to mind, for me is it's a funny thing when you're coaching a team that you have a child on, right?
Mm,
And
yeah.
so, around here we see a dynamic that we call daddy ball, and not with any kind of admiration or love. Daddy ball is not a good thing. Daddy ball is a thing where the rest of the team sort of becomes a vehicle for their child,
Mm,
and really to the detriment of everybody else. And so, as a coach, I guess I always had a fear that someone would lump me into that category, or think that was my intent. And so I sort of went sort of the extreme opposite. And my boys would probably have a lot to say about this, but my MO was more to dial up the expectation, dial up the accountability. If there was discipline, if there were punishments, or whatever that kind of went out, they got doled out heavier probably on my guys than anybody else. At least that was my intent, just to kind of make it so blatantly obvious that we're not doing that. And so there's a concept in an entrepreneurial team, and coaching them and really being a part of one, that we call the owner employee rules of the game. And it really talks about how, when you're the owner of the business, you feel like you've got this card in your pocket that you can kind of pull out and play at any kind. That's the owner card that,
hmm.
that sort of trumps everything. And when you're trying to develop, a healthy team in the way that we profess and strongly believe in, when an owner does something like that, it really blows the integrity of everything else you're trying to do. If an owner pulls that
Yeah.
card out and says, you know what, yeah, these rules are all great, but they don't apply to me
Hmm.
because I'm the owner. And so what we ask our owners to do is sort of divorce themselves from the idea that ownership brings with it the right to be an employee in the organization, because we don't believe it does. We believe that ownership brings with it two rights. One right is the right, obviously, to your share of the profits. The other right is your right to your voice in the decision making for the big decisions. So not every little decision in the business, but the big ones. Are we going to take on another shareholder? Are we going to take on some big debt? Are we going to buy another company? Sell the company, whatever it may be. So the biggies. But you separate the employee side of that, and all the people that are running this thing, the people that you are empowering to go and grow or generate cash flow, or generate profit, whatever it is that's the charter from the ownership, to go and do that. And then if you want to be an employee, then the question is, okay, here's the employee we need, the seat that we need filled on the bus, and are you the very best person to sit in that seat? And if you are, awesome. That's great. Hop in there and do that. Maybe we need you to do it because we can't find anybody else. We can't afford anybody else, and you're willing or whatever. But when you're in there, it's like, the need to be this example. So tying it back to your question for coaching, it's like, okay, boys, my boys, I'm expecting you to be the example of what we expect from every other player on this team. Illustrate that. So as an owner in the business, if you're going to sit in there, you better be the shining example for what you want from all the other employees in the business. So I'm just kind of reaching there, but that's the first
Yeah.
thought that comes to mind for a little bit of overlap.
It makes me think of a generational company, not only a manufacturing company, where someone is bringing a child into the business, or maybe they have been in the business and there's a transition with their parent. Do you get into situations where you're asked to help make those generational changes?
Yeah. So in fact, there's a probably a YouTube video I did. It's out there somewhere that talks about surviving the next generation because, and you're smiling, you're right, because you've seen it. And a lot of times that next generation just isn't wired for it. And they'll get in and they'll mess it up real quick. And, so the percentage that survived that second generation is, less than 100%. And the percentage that survived that third generation is a lot lower than that. So, again, it's back to this idea of what's best for the business and realizing that for a lot of entrepreneurs, that's their single largest investment, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, they've got so much invested in this, financially, that they need to really be thinking about what is the right thing. And it's the ego sometimes gets in the way, and all those
Hmm.
dynamics that go on. And a lot of times in a family, you've got a lot of other dynamics that come into that based on just pride and relationships and expectations. And maybe the older generation is the one that's pushing it. Maybe the younger generation is the one that's pulling it, and, anything and everything in between. So yeah, absolutely. We see all that stuff.
I think this is a good time to jump into the heart of where you're spending most of your time these days, which is EOS. And what does EOS stand for?
EOS is the Entrepreneurial Operating System.
And what is it?
Yeah, so EOS it's a system of tools and processes to help an entrepreneurial leadership team do three things really that we call vision, traction, and healthy. So think about vision as getting crystal clear on where you want to go
Hmm.
and how you're going to get there, and then getting everyone in the organization side to side, top to bottom, all 100% on what that looks like. So then once that's clear, traction means that every day when you walk off into the real world, this real world that you see begins to look more and more like that place you said you wanted to go. So
Hmm.
every day you feel like you're getting a little bit closer. So that starts to feel like progress. That progress gives you more confidence. That confidence gives you more energy to tackle the things that you need to tackle along the way. And then finally, healthy is about the team. So imagine you're sitting there in the room and you're looking across the table into the eyes of the folks that are on this team with you. You should feel like, you know what? We really do have the right folks here to do the stuff that we need to get done. Nothing we can't talk about. It's all just stuff. We're not afraid to bring things up. So we bring them up, we put them on the table, we hash them out, and then we figure out how to use those things to get us closer to that place that we all said we wanted to go. So that clarity of vision, that consistent feeling of traction, the accountability and alignment that goes with that, the discipline and
Hmm.
focus, and then finally just the health to really be able to deal with and talk about the stuff that you need to talk about. So the system is all the tools brought together comprehensively to allow those three things to become true.
In the book, they talk about six components. Has EOS evolved from the six to the three, or how, or is that the
So the
same but
three
different?
the three are the outcome.
The outcome. Okay.
The six are the key components of the model. And
Okay.
and so the way to think about the model, Jay, is it's like, think about the major muscle groups of your body as the major muscle, the six key components are like the major muscle groups of a business.
Hmm.
And so if we can work those six areas out and get, healthy and strong in each of those six areas, then you're going to achieve these three things, the vision, traction, healthy I just described. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Could you let the audience know what those six components are?
Sure. And let me try to give you just a thumbnail of each. So the first
Hmm.
one is vision. So again, vision I described for you already. So
Yeah.
clear on where we're trying to go, how we're going to get there, and then the organization 100% clear, 100% on the same page about what that looks like. So then the second component is people, and to execute on great vision requires great people. But the trick here is that different organizations are going to define great people differently. So you have to
Mm.
discover, what our definition is for great. And
Yeah.
that really looks at, what are our core values, how do we want our people wired at their core? And then really from a structural perspective, what's the right structure? How do we organize these folks and the things that we need to get done in a way that keeps them really focused and creates the right kind of accountability in the organization? So great people. The third key component is data. And this is really about driving out things like politics and subjectivity. And so
Yeah.
bringing us back to, the really facts and get you to a handful of numbers that if we can watch those and keep our eye on those, then we're going to spot those issues more quickly and be able to jump in and diagnose things, make decisions, make changes if we need to, and keep us all again aligned and on the same page. So when we're strong there, we know what those numbers are and we're watching them on our scorecard every week. So those are the first three. And when we see a team that starts to get really strong in those first three, it's sort of a shift that changes and they become more lucid and they can see the things that are in the way. And that leads us to the fourth key component, which is issues. So issues effectively are the things that are in the way of where you are and where you're trying to get to. And so when we're really healthy and strong on issues, we're spotting them and we're capturing them on something we call an issues list.
Mm-hmm.
And that discipline is powerful because it keeps us from doing the thing. Tell me if you've seen this, where, Mark and Jay start talking about some issue and we spend 20, 25 minutes talking about it before we realize, you know what, we can't really do anything about that. We're not the people to solve that. We don't have the information or the right people. So we kind of just set it aside and move on. Now we've wasted 25 minutes and didn't really do anything. So the issue list helps you kind of put those in a bucket. And then, when you need to talk about issues, you prioritize them. Which one is the most impactful thing here that if we were able to knock this out, solve it, make it go away forever would have the biggest impact for our company? Let's start there and dive into that and drive it through to action using an issue solving protocol. So that's issues. Fifth key component is process. And that's probably one that you and your audience will love and be very familiar with. But the idea here is that every company has about 6 to 10 what we call core processes. And these are kind of the mega or macro processes that will probably represent 80% of everything that happens in a business. So it's your lead generation process, your sales conversion process, your manufacturing process, or your service delivery process, your money process, your people processes, those kind of things, right? Whatever's right for a given business, but they're usually, about 6 to 10. And getting those things documented at a high level, identified first and then documented. And, the two mistakes we see people make on process, Jay, one is they ignore process. They just don't embrace it. Right. So they don't get any of the benefits. They don't get any of the leverage or scalability that and I'm sure your listeners know that you can get. But then the other end of it is they don't ignore it, but they go so deep into it. They get so caught up in the minutia that they sort of choke on it, and they get it so detailed that they can't maintain it. They can't keep up with it. And so then they just kind of throw their hands up and they give up on that. And so what we teach is a level of definition of process that really kind of begins at the high level and then lets you dive down to the more detailed versions where you need to. So you build the more detailed tools that you need. So we're really strong at that component. We know what those processes are, and they are followed by all, which means that every time one of those processes happens in our business, it happens consistently with that current best approach that we have documented. And then finally, the sixth component is what we call the traction component. And that's where those disciplines of focus and accountability come to bear. So we have something we call rocks, which are your 90-day priorities. What are we really going to focus on driving forward, getting done this quarter, this 90 days? And 90 days is kind of a powerful time frame. It's just long enough that you can really do some big impactful things, but it's short enough that we can not lose track of, why did we pick this thing to work on again? And then the other part of it is your meeting pulse. And so that's your weekly level 10s, your quarterly pulses, your annual pulses, where we get everybody, re-engaged, realigned, reconnected, and refocused, and keep that thing moving forward. So those are the 6 key components.
That's a great overview. And if you're listening, I will let you know that we at Rapid implemented not EOS, but a similar system. And if we had not done so, we would not have
achieve the growth that we did. And I don't know if you know, Mark, we grew on average 32% a year from 2010 to 2017. And having an operating structure rhythm was essential to making sure we were all aligned toward achieving the right goals. And of course, that depends on the organization, and that's what we hashed out in the meeting was figuring out what those right goals are. I want to jump back to people a little bit, because without the people, to me, that is the foundation of a company. And I like to say is every company has a culture, whether you realize it or not.
Yep.
And you can change your culture if you have to be intentional. And I remember when we were going through exercises talking about the people and identifying the traits and the core values and that, and picking that one person, like if we had 20 of these people, our company would be unstoppable.
Right.
And I love the focus on the people, the celebrations. One of our core values was enjoy the journey. And we took lots of time to celebrate both in little ways and as well as big ways with parties and birthday cakes and things like that. And it made it a fun place to work because, as I said to people, you may spend more time at Rapid in a week than you do at home with your family. So
Probably
if you
do.
don't enjoy being there, why are you here? And I certainly wanted to enjoy being at the company. So if someone is thinking of people as, I always use the word team as rather than employee, but if someone's thinking of people as an expense, how do you try to reposition that so that they are more aware of the need to really create a team and align the people towards what your vision is?
Yeah. So again, a lot of parts to that question. So one method, one sort of thinking model is to look at back to the issues list, look at all the stuff that's on your issues list. And a lot of times it's things that have been stuck for a while that are frustrating you. And it's, it's kind of, why can't we figure this out? And many times you can assign a dollar figure to it. And you go, you know what, if we could knock that down, if we could get past that, it would save us this much money. It would unlock this much opportunity. It would, save me this much headache, whatever. And you can put some kind of a rough dollar figure on it. And then many times you can also, for a given role in the organization, what if we had somebody to, fill this seat or that seat or whatever. And of course I deal with the integrator seat a lot. And so it's that one. And so you go back to your issues list and you go, okay, if we had a rock star in that seat, how many of these issues would we be able to solve? And you just kind of check them off and you add up that dollar figure. And then you go back to kind of how much it's going to actually cost us. What's the investment going to be for us to bring this kind of person on? And you do the math, and almost always it's a powerfully positive ROI on doing it. So that's the inspector, right? They're not an expense. They're an investment to solve some specific need that you're feeling, that you've identified. So that's one way to think about it.
Who should be involved? Is every person who is employed at the company, are they part of the EOS process? Is it only the executive team? What do you suggest?
So it begins with the leadership team. As the leadership team goes, so goes the rest of the organization. And so, our approach is to teach that leadership team and help them master the tools. So then they're enabled to cascade that, and teach those tools and cascade that through the rest of the organization. So ultimately, the whole organization does get engaged. So, for example, all employees end up engaged in some type of a weekly meeting where they're talking about issues, they're reporting on measurables, they're checking in on rocks on quarterly priorities, and really they're helping each other solve the issues that are being identified. So, you get there eventually. So you don't get freaked out by thinking, wow, how could I possibly get there overnight? You don't. It's a process and it takes time, but starting with that leadership team, building those muscles and getting really good at that and using, what we call the foundational tools, which help you
Hmm.
get clear and really strengthen those 6 key components. That's how it happens. So everybody ends up engaged in some form or fashion. The leadership team, though, is carrying a lot of the weight in terms of setting the direction, creating that vision, and setting the high level priorities for what we need to do next to get us to this place we've said we all want to go.
We're sort of dancing around a question I probably should have asked you earlier. Why would a company want to implement EOS? Let's say that things are going okay. Why should I think about changing?
Yeah. So maybe you shouldn't. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if things are working and you're getting what you want, then you may be fine.
How many
There's a
people
lot
are
of,
getting what they want, though?
well, that's the reality, right? So what we see, a lot of times are companies and entrepreneurs and leadership teams that, they're frustrated because they're not. The things they're trying
Mhm.
aren't working. The things that used to work don't work anymore. They're hitting that ceiling of
Yeah.
complexity. They're struggling with people. They're not able to create accountability. They can't just throw more money at it or more people at it or whatever. And so that's the situation where, you really are missing something. You need an operating system to help you get that clarity and focus and be able to make the progress you want to make. Now, I should say this, there are more than one operating system in the world. You know this.
Hmm.
And so we strongly believe that more important than which operating system you choose is that you choose one and choose one and master it. I mean, truly become great at whatever system you choose. And that's going to, give you the best chance of success of getting where you want to go. Because the other version of that is if you kind of do it piecemeal and you take a little bit of this one, a little bit of that one, and this language from here and that language from there, what I can promise you will happen is you're going to confuse the heck out of your people. And that complexity, that confusion is just going to add friction to what you're trying to do and slow you down. So, strongly believe it's important, it's in fact essential that you choose one. And of course, we believe EOS is a great one, but there's different roads to get to where you want to go. So pick the one that's right for you.
I remember when I was given a book and I read through it and I realized as an owner, and we're going to talk about visionary and integrator. I'm the visionary, and I had expectations for my company, for the people who are working for me, the direct reports, and ultimately everyone at the company to execute my vision. However, it was in my head,
Mm-hmm.
and I would tell different people different pieces of it, and I might even change my mind at times. So I realized I was confusing my team and I wasn't giving them the framework where they could execute on my vision. So I had a CFO and a COO, and it was the three of us in the beginning. And quickly we realized we needed to get the rest of the leadership team involved. And the the power, though, the results I saw of bringing it at first to my COO and my CFO, we immediately saw great positive impacts. And then when we brought it to the leadership team, it was even more so because it was surprising to me, and it shouldn't have been, but it was surprising to me that they actually didn't understand everything that I thought was crystal clear on what we wanted to do. And this process was a great way to get all of my ideas, my vision, and my framework out in the open, let people understand it, pick at it, shape it, make it their own. And ultimately, we had over 325 folks in the company. We had a structure where it rolled up and down through the organization. We had actually daily quick meetings. Everybody, though, as an individual contributor to the CFO, COO, was in a meeting, was part of it, and the information rolled up and down the chain. It was such a beautiful thing, and it made the journey much more enjoyable because we were all moving in the same direction in a line. So I wanted to share, this is why I'm so passionate. I think if you feel like you're working in your business, and you don't know how to work on the business, this is the entry point.
Yeah, I love that. If you think about, humans as a vector of energy, an arrow. So imagine a sheet of paper with arrows, and they're kind of all pointed in different directions because you've got all your people kind of focused on something else. Imagine if you can get all those arrows pointed in the same direction. It's extremely powerful. And that's basically what you're describing. And, you talk about something that is a very common visionary trait, which is the reality that it is crystal clear in your mind. I mean, you see it so
I
obviously.
thought about it 3 times, so why isn't it happening?
Exactly. And you mentioned sometimes changing your mind, but you didn't say anything about letting anybody know you changed your mind, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's all happening in real time in vivid color inside your own mind, but then it's about bringing everybody else along for that ride.
Yes.
And getting them clear so they're participating, they're part of it. And again, it helps get all that human energy pointed in the same direction. That's where the power is. That's where the power is.
I think the term visionary, we talked about it a little bit.
Mhm.
That's pretty clear. You mentioned, though, another role, and that's the integrator. And what does an integrator do? What is their role?
Yeah. So think of the integrator as the execution brain and the execution leader, the one that makes it happen. So the visionary, and when we look at visionaries through history, I mean, you can look at classic examples like Walt Disney and his brother Roy. You've got, McDonald's had a classic visionary integrator structure when it started. So did Ford. So did Standard Oil. So did Honda. So on and on throughout history, we see companies that in their early stages, they really had this visionary integrator structure. So to simplify it, if you think about the visionary as the one who has all the ideas, they're thinking of new stuff all the time. They're kind of seeing the future. They're looking down the road and they're thinking about, wow, where could we position this company that's going to be, the most advantageous for us based on where things are heading. They're usually great at big external relationships, whether that's in their industry or in the local community or with big customers, whatever it might be. But they're usually not great at execution and follow through and the little details and all that kind of stuff. On the other hand, the integrator, they are great at that. That's what their superpower is. They really drive alignment. They're great at resolving, disagreements, obstacles that come up. They can help knock those out and really just kind of drive the execution of making things real. So the visionary kind of makes it up. The integrator makes it real, makes it happen, and drives that alignment through the rest of the leadership team and ultimately the rest of the organization to execute that business plan and deliver whatever those P&L results are, hold people accountable. A lot of times the visionary, frankly, isn't great at managing people. They can do it. And the reason they can do it, heck, they can do a lot of things, but usually the reason they can do all those things is because they had to get where they are, to get to where they got to. They had to do a bunch of this stuff themselves. So they became serviceable at it and maybe pretty good at it. But, if you ask them, if you fill them full of truth serum and, hold a gun to their head and ask them, what they really enjoy most, that's not the stuff that they enjoy the most. They enjoy that ideation. They enjoy that looking out on the horizon. They enjoy, those big external relationships. And when we can bring somebody in to partner with them that can drive the execution, that's why we call it rocket fuel. That combination of vision and execution is truly powerful. And, Gino saw it time and time again. He lived it. I lived it in one of my companies, and then I've seen it in tons and tons of my clients. And when we can get those two distinct types of leaders working together in a structured relationship at the helm of an entrepreneurial business, boom, it goes. And so that's what that's all about.
I'm definitely a visionary, and managing people sucks energy from me. Like you said, I'll do it because I have to. And
Yep.
I think one of the best days of my life is when Tom Persh, our COO, came on board and took over the integrator role. I didn't have that word for it. However, that was his job, managing people. And I managed Tom, and that was
Yeah,
He
that
he pretty much managed himself, so it was a wonderful relationship.
exactly. That's how you know you hired the right one, when it feels like they can manage themselves. I used to
Yeah.
think I was a really great manager, and through my career, I've at times managed, lots of people. But then when you see somebody who's truly masterful at it, it gives you a whole different perspective, and they make it look easy. It is easy for them. There's some
Right.
things that we do that others kind of scratch their head and they're like, how can you do that? Then those things feel easy to us. So everybody has that. It's back to Dan's unique ability, right? We've all got
Hmm.
something. And when we're in that space, it doesn't feel like work. But just because it doesn't feel like work to us doesn't mean it's not hugely valuable, and in fact
Right.
very unique, and we may be the only people that can do that for our business.
Are you a visionary or an integrator yourself?
uh, I am strongly visionary. So my visionary number, we have assessments for all this, and so my
Mm.
visionary number is very close to the top of the scale, and my integrator number is just north of the midpoint. So that's where I am. But again, I've done all that stuff in the past because I had to.
Yeah, I think many of us entrepreneurs, we do what we have to. And the beauty of a system like EOS is helping us let go of the things that we don't like to do, that we're not good at doing, or certainly that there's other people who are better at doing it.
That's it.
And you mentioned before the bus analogy and putting the right people in the right seats. And I always love that because it's it's a great way to think of your company and the different roles, and think of the person. It's like taking the person away from the job they're doing now and saying, this is the role I need, and this is what this person is good at. Are they in the right seat? Maybe they should be in a different seat, or maybe they shouldn't be on the bus at all, and we need to find some new people.
Yeah, this is one of the first tools we teach. We call it the accountability chart, and it creates the structure for the business. And one of the things that I've done, and many of the entrepreneurs that I meet have done, is along their path, they will meet people, and they'll meet
Mm,
really good people. And it's kind of like, man, this person's really strong. I don't really have a place for them now, but I'm going to go ahead and bring them on because they're so strong. And so they do this multiple times. And at some point, they kind of look back at this collection of folks they've got, and it
mhm,
doesn't really make a lot of sense for how it all works together. And so when we teach accountability chart, we basically teach just kind of go white sheet. So, don't get trapped in the way you've always done it.
mhm,
Don't get trapped in the reality of where you are today, but just kind of ask yourself, all right, if we were going to try to go from wherever we are today and climb this next hill, whatever it may be, 12 to 18 months out, whatever that next thing is you're shooting for, what's the structure that would give us the best chance to make that happen? And effectively, what you're doing is you're sort of clustering the work into human size groupings. This kind of stuff goes together and that kind of stuff goes together. And then you're creating accountability, one-to-one accountability. So this seat, as we define it, is going to be accountable to this next seat, through
mhm,
the whole thing leading up to this integrator and ultimately to the visionary. So now we got this structure. So now we want to fill it. We do structure first and people second. And so then we start taking the folks that we think are going to be the best people to fill those seats. Back to, we talked about owner employee stuff before, right? So we've got a high standard. We're going to apply it equally to an owner as we would to somebody that we might hire off the street. And, are they wired for this thing? Do they really want to do this thing?
mm,
Do they have
yeah.
what we call the capacity, which is the experience, the training, the education, expertise, battery power, bandwidth, all that stuff to perform it at the level we need it performed? And if you can answer yes to all that, all those questions, then we call that's a right seat for them. And so you just fill them one by one. And, you may find that when you fill them all, that you've got some people left over. You may find that, somebody that used to be in a seat kind of like that ends up in a completely different seat that looks like this, because actually that's the best place for them. That's the best answer for them. And so a lot of power in that, a lot of power in getting clear, and a lot of power in kind of making those moves and mapping that out. And then you'll find gaps. You'll see places where you need
Mhm.
something you don't have, or some place where you've got somebody that they're willing to do it for a while just to kind of help, but it's not the right long-term answer. And so all these things are just issues, and so we just capture all these things and prioritize them, and whatever it becomes the most important, impactful thing for you to solve, and you go to work and solve it.
One of the things that I loved, you threw out some pieces of EOS here, the accountability chart. I know there's the 5 rules for role alignment. And you don't have to think as an owner to come up with your own system, your own process. This is all laid out for you. You can focus on adapting it to your business. And I always think of, we have only so many mental cycles. And if we have to use those to create the process and the system, then we're taking away from actually implementing it. And perhaps we could talk real quickly. You mentioned the accountability chart, the 5 rules for role alignment is another big piece in your book. Briefly, what are those and why are they important?
Let's see if I can remember all 5. Probably can't, but the 5 rules is really talking, first and foremost about the visionary integrator relationship.
Hmm.
And so, the first rule, and it's number 1 for a reason, is to stay on the same page. And so
Yep.
think of you and your COO and, think about when bad things happened and you diagnose back to, gee, why did that happen? And, I'm going to give it an 80% plus chance that the answer was because we got out of alignment. We
Yep.
weren't on the same page. And so it's about really being proactive to make sure that you do the work. And we have a discipline we call a same page meeting. And so that prescribes that at least once a month, you sit down with that integrator counterpart and you've got your issues, they've got their issues. You spend a little time really connecting as humans. So, what's really going on? Talk to me about that youth football team you coach. Did you guys win the championship? How's your kid doing? How's, your wife had that thing? How's that going? So good stuff, bad stuff, but you really connect on a human level. And remember, some people talk about that relationship as almost like a business marriage. It's that kind of relationship. So we got to treat it like that. We got to treat it. We got to invest in it at that level. So if you'll do that, and then I've got my issues, you've got your issues, and we just kind of go through and begin to talk them through and work them off. And the things that end up being issues in a same page meeting are the things where, what, I can tell we're not on the same page right now. Something's happening, some kind of friction is going on. So, that would be a good issue. Another issue would be something that I'm concerned about. It feels to me like it's getting a little wobbly. Nothing's happened yet. The wheels haven't shot off, but I want to be sure we get in front of it. Third kind would be, here's this thing that's coming. It's coming down the pipe. We're going to be working on it soon. And I just want to get ahead of it and make sure we talk about it all now. So we are proactive in making sure that we don't get out of alignment, don't get off the same page. So that's one of the 5 rules. Another one is the employee. Sure.
So jump in. I think the rule I like best, Mark, is the integrator is the tiebreaker.
Great.
And to me, that is so critical because as a visionary, I've got all these ideas, but there's no accountability for me to make it happen. And if I really have the relationship with my integrator and I trust them, then really they are my circuit breaker. They're the ones that are making sure we are actually going to do the right things or do the things that are actually possible. I might think they are possible. However, I don't have to deal with all the issues, the roadblocks, the sand in the gears that may happen when my idea isn't as practical as I thought. So I really like that one.
Yeah, it's, there's a lot in it. And so I love hearing the way you describe it. And, the reality is that the integrator being the tiebreaker can sort of protect the visionary from themselves.
Yes.
Right. You call it a circuit breaker. That's a good way to think about it because they are so much closer to the ground than you are and closer to the details and the resources and the other stuff that's going on and how it's tugging on things in different directions. And so it puts them in a really good position to be the type. And here's the way, don't think people hear this and they think, oh gosh, they make all the decisions. That's not it at all. 80+% of the time, we've got some individual making the decision based on their role of accountability. So the sales leader's making some decision about that. The finance leader's making some decision about that. Ops, whatever. But every once in a while, we get at odds with each other. So, ops is saying, no, it has to go this way. And marketing and sales are saying, no, it has to go that way. And they can't work it out. So what we can't do is we can't stay stuck. That would be the worst thing that would happen
Right.
is we just sit there, oh, what are we going to do? And we don't do anything. No, we need to make decisions and move forward. And so that's where the integrator steps in and they hear all sides of the argument, whatever it is, within the context of our vision, our greater good. And then they make a call. This is what we're doing. Boom. And they're accountable for that. Right. And there's so much power in
Yes.
that versus always trying to reach consensus and blah, blah, blah. You know, in our system, consensus is it's a happy accident. If it works, great. but we want leaders making
Yeah.
decisions with accountability for those decisions. So I love that's one of your favorite rules.
Our audience are people making parts, and you've worked with probably hundreds, if not thousands, of companies over the years. Your book name is Rocket Fuel. You talked about once you get this system rolling and in place, the potential is really unlimited. Do you have any stories of a manufacturing company who has been uber successful in taking EOS and using that as rocket fuel?
Yeah, so I can't give you a specific name, unfortunately. I've got a couple of manufacturing companies that I've worked with directly in the greater EOS community, and again, this is kind of interesting perspective. So when I started, there was a couple of dozen EOS implementers in the world. Now there's close to 900.
Wow. And
Which
by
is
implementer, you mean a coach, an outside
exactly
coach who you would hire?
somebody who on a full-time basis is teaching people this system and helping them implement it. So the number of companies that have been touched by the system, I mean, it's so much bigger than I am. But I've got a couple of manufacturing stories. So I can, one example is somebody, and let me just kind of give you general numbers where they were approached early on. Small parts manufacturer, call it a precision manufacturer, approached early on for an acquisition at a very, very low multiple. And they went to work on implementing EOS, building the value of the enterprise. And then, not that they were actively shopping it or whatever, but, they had somebody come around later with a multiple offer that was trying to think of how many times more than what the initial one was. Let's say 20 to 50 times more. So
Wow.
a lot more, and all cash, which was a big deal
Wow.
too. So, if you just think about the valuation of the business,
Hmm.
it's proven time and time again to be a huge factor because it's it not only does it help you grow, not only does it help you be more profitable and more predictable, but it's a big de-risker, right? And
Yes.
having been involved in a number of
Yeah.
transactions, right? That's a big thing. We can get to agreement on value real quick. And then we start looking at, yeah, but, and it starts going down until most of the time we kill it because neither one of us wants to do it anymore.
There's a rumor that there are PE firms who specifically target companies who are implementing EOS. Is that true?
Not a rumor. That would be a true fact. Yeah. I see that, yeah, I see in fact companies that their portfolio that's what it's filled with. I see PE firms that will, they'll make an acquisition, a new acquisition, and that's kind of step one of their process is they'll implement EOS. You also hear them talk about the integrator role specifically, because back to de-risking, who's the biggest risk? Which role is the biggest risk in an acquisition company?
I would say the integrator.
The biggest risk for the
Oh,
acquirer?
oh, well, I see what you're getting at. For
If I buy your company, Jay,
yeah,
who,
yeah, if you don't have EOS or a operating system in place, and essentially the owner, the visionary is working
right.
in the business, then how will the company function
Yep.
if the
That,
owner is no
that,
longer there?
that
By
that's
implementing EOS,
yeah. So
then
that's it, right? It's the owner,
there's that.
founder,
Yeah.
visionary, and because a lot of times they're still involved in a bunch of stuff because they don't usually work well for others,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
So the expectation I hear and see in a lot of deals is that they'll stay around for 3 years, and the reality I see is they maybe make it 12 months.
Hmm.
And so as an acquiring company, if I'm looking at your company and you've got, the visionary is whatever the visionary is, but EOS is implemented and they got a rock star integrator, I'm going to
Yeah.
be fine.
My
We'll
I was gonna say my last day was the day of the sale because we had such a strong COO. And again, we didn't use the term integrator. However, they were comfortable that without me, Rapid was going to do just fine.
Yep. So that's what we see. So anyway, big value add.
You have, again, worked with so many different companies. Besides implementing EOS or a similar system, what are the successful companies doing? What's a couple commonalities that are repeated over and over?
So I want to first go back to a comment that you made about culture. And, one of the things that I see there is I see people who talk about culture. And so they'll come in and they'll be like, oh man, we have such a great culture. We have a ping pong table. We do picnics. We do birthday, right? And they all this kind of stuff that they talk about. And then I watch them miss their numbers, miss their rocks, have all kinds of dysfunction within their leadership team, and basically just not look very good at all. And so I thought about this for a while, and I came up with what I came to start calling the culture formula. Okay. And here's what it is. Super simple. So the culture formula is a function of what I call crystal clear expectations, specifically around core values. So we talked about core values, your DNA, how somebody's made, and GWC. So those defined roles in that accountability chart, what needs to get done. Okay. So crystal clear expectations around those things. So imagine if there was not a person in your whole organization that had any question whatsoever around what was expected about how they show up every day in this organization and exactly what they do and get done every day in this organization. So crystal clear expectations times something we call LMA, which is leadership, management, and accountability. We believe that accountability is a function of leadership and management. So if you have that strong, clear accountability derived from good, healthy leadership and management, top to bottom in the organization, not every once in a while, but every single day, every single place. So an organization that has that crystal clear expectations around those things and rock solid top to bottom LMA, that is the pinnacle of culture, because they're going to get exactly what they want every time. And so to your question, that's what I see the top performers do, is they focus on that. They're laser focused on that, and they're great at it. And so they don't have bad people. They don't have people that, boy, we got to spend a lot of time managing them. They have the kind of people that are taking stuff off other people's plate because they're bringing a lot more to the party than they're taking from the party. They're coming up with the new stuff. They're just additive. They're energy pumps. They're all that kind of stuff that you might expect and want. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's certainly the first thing that comes to mind for me.
I like how you put the spin on culture. The fun things and the celebrations are certainly important. I hadn't thought about, though, the accountability and the recognition of exactly what my job is as part of culture. However, that makes sense for sure. I've been listening so far and I'm saying, wow, this is awesome. I'm tired of working in the business and I'm interested in checking out EOS. Where do I start? How do I think about implementing, or yeah, where do I start?
Yeah. So for your audience, again, a lot of job shop owners, that are kind of in that seat coming from that place. The first place I would recommend is something we call Rocket Fuel University. And so if you go to Rocket Fuel University, you're going to find some assessments that you can take to kind of help you understand this whole visionary integrator role and that dynamic. There's a lot of video content on there that I've put out to kind of help explain some of these fundamental concepts. It's all free. So, knock yourself out, take full advantage of it. There's even some calls that we do where you can ask questions and get questions answered and interact with some other folks from the community. So I would start there. If you really are kind of focused on EOS as the operating system you want to go. I mean, eosworldwide.com is where you get all of that information. Again, Rocket Fuel University is kind of naturally going to lead you down that path if that is kind of where the path that you feel you want to follow as you start to learn some of this stuff and answer some of your questions. So those would be my first two. How's that?
Let's be real specific. So it's Rocket Fuel University. Is that a YouTube? Is it a website?
Rocketfueluniversity.com.
Okay.
So you go to that website, and that's the gateway to all your answers.
And the primary book is Traction. Is that correct?
Yeah. So Traction is it's the first book that Gino wrote that describes the operating system, EOS. It's like a textbook version. So it's going to talk to you about all the tools. It's going to give you all the pretty dense. It's that style of reading. Everybody kind of has their different preferred method of information input. So that's that one. You know, Rocket Fuel is going to talk about the visionary integrator relationship. There's another book called Get a Grip that talks about the process. It's told as a parable. So Gino wrote it with my buddy Mike Payton, and it's basically the story of a company implementing EOS. And it's a fictional company, but it's really an amalgamation of real companies. So it's all stuff that's based on things that we've actually seen happen.
You also have a podcast yourself, which if somebody is driving to work may help provide real world examples, because I know you have guests on the podcast of people who have successfully implemented EOS, and you talk about the process that they've gone through, maybe some of the challenges, some of the wins.
Yeah, the Rocket Fuel podcast with me, you search that, you should be able to find it anywhere, and I'll have visionary and integrator duos on there. And we'll talk about their lessons, what they've learned, what worked well, what was hard, how they got through it. And yeah, a lot of good real world stories on there for sure. So check that out.
I would also say that the process, particularly, let's say you're a 20-person company, and this may seem like a lot, and it is. However, patience is really required, because it's not a sprint. It's not even a middle distance event. This is a marathon, and really you'll never finish. Just as your company, well, if you implement it the way that you probably want to, you're going to grow. And as you grow, then you will constantly have new challenges, which are great. I always used to say, there's good challenges and there's bad challenges. And when you're growing, you tend to create a lot more good challenges than bad challenges. So it's definitely a journey. And my suggestion, we implemented it without a implementer in the beginning. And I really found there was a lot of value to having an outside party. First of all, they organized it, they made it all happen so that we didn't take away somebody from that role, which always seemed to happen at a time when they were really needed somewhere else, as well as they had that collective experience. They've probably worked with hundreds of companies themselves, and if they haven't seen it exactly before, they've seen something that rhymes with it.
Yep.
And that's really, you can look at it as an expense. However, I would encourage you to look at it as an investment. And that's, I think, part of EOS Worldwide is you help people find implementers and find a match. There's usually somebody geographically located close to you.
Yep, 100%. And I like the way that you said that. When you work with a professional implementer, you're going to get there faster. You're going to have fewer missteps. You're going to have that objective third party in the room versus, somebody inside trying to wear multiple hats, and they've got their own agenda, and it's kind of hard to represent their own agenda when they're trying to represent the process. I mean, it's doable. It's just harder. But we've got good folks all over the place, and I'm happy to help. Find somebody that can help them. Do whatever I can if there's something that we can do to help somebody get closer to where they want to be. That's really what we're all about.
As we get close to the end here, Mark, I'm thinking, I believe in this so much, and I want my audience, I want everyone to have an operating structure. There's so much freedom that comes with it. What parting words can you give to somebody that, if they're on the edge here, on the fence, that maybe nudges them to say, let's give this a shot?
So I think it's about, again, when I think about the visionary entrepreneur, it's about getting clear on what you want. So, Jay and I met through Strategic Coach, and I like to describe Strategic Coach as like EOS is an operating system for the entrepreneurial company. Strategic Coach is an operating system for the entrepreneur. And it helps us get clear on what it is that we really want. So if I'm the founding entrepreneur and I know that I want this thing here, and then I get clear on, okay, here's how this company, this particular business can serve me making that real, then it's about that tension between point A and point B. And so if I feel that strongly enough that this really can help me get there and I really want there, then that changes my context about how I think about all this stuff. If I'm too focused in the now and I'm too focused in just the day to day, it's just another thing to deal with. But if I think on that longer horizon, it really is a strategic lever that can get me off of stuck and really dial up my probability of actually having a chance to make that future I want real. So that would be my parting words, is spend some time thinking about that future, get clear on that for yourself, understand the role this business has to get you to there, and then, think about whether that's worth it for you or not. How much do you really want it?
Yeah, great parting shot. Mark, if people do want to connect with you, what are some of the ways that they can find you, reach you?
You bet. So I'm Mark C. Winters pretty much everywhere. So you can go to markcwinters.com is my website, but on all the socials, if you'll look for Mark C. Winters, whether it's LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram or whatever, that's how you find me. And I'm always happy to meet new people. And again, if there's some way I can help you move a little bit farther down the road you want to go down, I'd love to have the chance.
You're everywhere.
I don't know about that, but a lot of places.
Well, I've been looking forward to this. This was so much fun. And if you are listening and you are in that business and want to get out of it and work on your business and really realize what the vision is that you have for your company, I would so encourage you to check out EOS, check out the others if you want, take a first step. And whether you're better off listening to a podcast, grab one of Mark's Rocket Fuel podcasts, pick up a copy of the book, watch a video, somehow take that first step and check this out. And maybe you even assign it to somebody in your company. I want you to take that first step, somehow figure out that there is a way that we can implement an operating structure and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So Mark, thanks for bringing some clarity to this, and really thank you for your time. Appreciate you sharing your wisdom, and we'll see you hopefully in a quarterly meeting soon.
Sounds great, Jay. Always fun spending time with you.
All right. Until next time, keep those spindles turning and those lasers cutting. Have a super day.
Thanks for listening to the Job Shop Show podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to subscribe so future episodes are automatically downloaded directly to your device. You can also leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Not only do I read every single one, it also helps me understand what content matters most to you. Thanks again for listening to the Job Shop Show.